Good morning. So, today I want to talk about emotion dysregulation in your child and adolescent clients. If you're watching me on Instagram, so I'm streaming live on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and in my private Facebook group for child and adolescent therapists using play therapy and expressive arts. If you're interested and you're on Facebook, that group is called Play and Expressive Arts Therapy Playground. You do have to answer the questions in order to be admitted into the group, and you have to answer all of them. Um, so, if you are joining me live today, I would love to know who's here. Please post your name in the comments, where you're from, what population you work with, and if you're a child and adolescent therapist, do you have children on your caseload who are coming in because they are having meltdowns, outbursts, angry, irritable, cranky, anxious, overwhelmed, and maybe even parents who are super duper worried about their child becoming some kind of sociopath when they grow up, which that is such a fear for these parents. They just worry so much about their children who struggle because they're always getting in trouble, or if they're not getting trouble at school, they're saving it till they get home, and then they're having meltdowns at home, and it kind of disrupts the whole family. Likely, a lot of times, it even interferes and causes problems with sibling relationships. And I think that's something we don't really focus on too much in the play therapy field, is more the child in context of family and how those sibling relationships influence our young clients as well. So I think that's one of the things. If you have a client who is struggling with emotion dysregulation, I think it's always a good idea to check how their relationships are with their siblings. One, it kind of finds some of the resources for them, some support systems. So if you're watching me, I would love to know who's here. Post your name in the comments. Where are you from? Where do you work? Where do you work? What population do you work with? Are you using play therapy? And do you have children on your caseload, adolescents, who struggle with emotion dysregulation? So here's the question that I like to think of when I am working with clients and thinking about what's going on with them and what's going to help them. So, what is the best way to help these clients when they're coming in to your office and parents are bringing them to you because they need help? So, hey there. Um, Springfield, Virginia. That is kind of where I'm from. Dr. Whitney. Work with children and adolescents using, floor time. I am familiar with floor time. I took a training in that probably 20 years ago. Yes, that is a population that works, struggles with emotion dysregulation. So I'm actually living in Southern Nevada currently, but I originally come from the Northern Virginia area and spent lots of time over there in Springfield. So welcome. So glad you're here. Um, hey, Cinna, how are you? Yep, Cinna is in Utah, which is my neighbor state because I live right on the border essentially. So I do a lot of interaction with Utah. And you, Cinna, are in a very beautiful area. Although I bet it's a bit cold, cold now up there, and because you're kind of, I think, mid to upper Utah. Yep, 12 to 18 years. Yep. Um, so when I'm beginning, what are you guys? What is your biggest struggle when you are trying to figure out what is going to be helpful to your clients? And I would even include, because here's the one thing I hear a lot. I hear a lot is um, really trying to help parents understand what's going on and working with parents sometimes because they're so overwhelmed and anxious about these clients, or sometimes they're, maybe not using the most effective parenting skills to manage that. And so to me, because that's one that I encounter a lot. I do a lot of supervision. Right now, I have an online supervision group. I do a lot of trainings. Right now, they're all online live webinars. And so when I do trainings, this topic comes up a lot, which is how do you help parents understand what's going on with their child and engaging them. But the other thing is, when you're doing the sessions, what are you going to do to help these clients? And so when I'm conceptualizing, so I've been doing this 20 years now. I've been in the mental health field, specializing, working with children and adolescents and families for about 30 years now. And then prior to that, I was a special ed teacher for children with emotion dysregulation problems. Dr. Whitney, you will know where I was. I was over at Franconia Center. There was an elementary school. I don't even know if Franconia Center is still there. We had amazing staff there. It was a really good experience. But through that, I realized I don't want to do special ed. I don't want to be a special ed teacher. I worked with kids with emotional problems. What I really want to do is this counseling thing I learned about. So that was back in the 80s, by the way. So one of the things that I've learned is really trying to figure out, I need a theoretical lens and model and way of conceptualizing what's going on that is grounded by, there's another Facebook user. So FYI, Facebook users, you're probably in my group, which is cool. If you are a special ed teacher and you're in my Facebook group, I totally want to know who you are. Yeah, that's cool. A fellow Fairfax County, for those of you who are not in Fairfax County, is absolutely ginormous. They have a lot of good services for kids who are not neurotypical, shall we say, a lot. I worked actually in what was it called? Well, it was recreation therapy, oh, goodness gracious, I can't remember what it was. Anyways, in the summers when I wasn't in school or in graduate school, they had their special education recreation services. They have really good ones in Fairfax County. So that was nice for some of the kids with special needs. So thinking about a framework that would help to understand what is going on with children and what is targeting their emotion dysregulation, to me, was one of the first things that was really, really important. And then as I began to learn more about neuroscience and attachment theory, what I began to realize was this was a really good theoretical model that had a lot of research to back it up about emotion dysregulation. And so to me, using an attachment and neuroscience lens helped me to figure out and get a better sense of, for this particular client, what was the reason they were having trouble regulating their strong emotions, so much so that their strong emotions were getting in the way of being effective at school. Like they might be getting in trouble at school, they may be getting in trouble at home, which means their self-esteem starts to take a nosedive. Parents are overwhelmed, they don't know what to do. And if you have children, like I have children, and I do not have the neurotypical children. Mine are young adults now, but my heart goes out to parents, though, because I remember I did not get the easy ones. They're awesome now. They were awesome then. So a lot of the good things, but I see my friends doing things with their kids. I'd be like, it doesn't work that way for me. And I got to figure out a different way. So I think maybe that's for me one of the ways where I was like, I got to figure this out, because I had to do it with my own kids. Like, what the heck is going on? Because my kids are amazing, but these things that are going on make absolutely no sense. And this is not going to be helpful. And then I would get overwhelmed and I'd be like, terrible mom. And I have this horrible mommy guilt. So my heart goes out to these parents because I have walked a similar walk, not the same, a similar. So here's what I found. Looking at things from a neuroscience and attachment lens, one, first and foremost, is I forgot my little banners here. So if you're watching on Instagram, you won't see my cool little banners that I can use from StreamYard. If you are watching from LinkedIn, my Facebook group, or YouTube, you will see my cool little banners. So using a neuroscience and attachment lens, we know from tons of research, attachment theory, now that we have a better understanding of attachment from a neurobiological standpoint, we know that attachment, one of the huge functions of attachment is co-regulation. We know from neuroscience, children, when they're born, have a very immature emotion regulation circuitry. We know that that is part of their developmental process, that they are going to develop a neuroregulation circuitry. Our goal from an attachment standpoint is to help children and parents be able to work collaboratively so parents can be co-regulators. That to me is one of the things that is useful about having a neuroscience and attachment lens, is I can fall back on that and understand co-regulation is a critical component of emotion regulation. Neuroscience shows us also that child development is learning to lay down and develop that neurocircuitry over time. Part of that neurocircuitry involves a lot of different areas of the brain, including the frontal lobes, the prefrontal cortex. So that doesn't really even fully develop into mid to late 20s. So what we also know is non-typical, like non-neurotypical, neurodivergent, that's easier to say, neurodivergent children don't follow the typical developmental pathway that way, because they have different ways in which their brains work. So being able to use an attachment and neuroscience framework gives me a way of understanding what's going on. And then I can use that information to explain it to parents so that they, first and foremost, understand, okay, I heard this phrase a long time ago at a training, neuroscience workshop I was going to. It was awesome. It was in an attachment conference. The brain is the boss of the body, meaning there's that neurobiological component to emotion regulation, that mind-body connection, and the brain is the boss of the body. So if we can understand what's activating it from a neuroscience and attachment framework, then we can begin to then use that information to target where change needs to happen. And if I can explain the attachment and neurobiology component of emotion regulation and co-regulation, and children needing their parents to co-regulate their emotions while they develop that emotion circuitry. And this is true for even neurodivergent children. They need parents to co-regulate as well. And so using that framework really helps parents to understand that and begins to help them shift their mindset a little bit. And then also we have change points. We have points to target. We look for what activates. We look at intensity, duration, and frequency of the emotion dysregulation. We look for how to, what kind of works well for that child to soothe their neurocircuitry. We bring parents in the process. Even adolescents need co-regulation with their parents. and it's going to look different than maybe a 7 or an 8-year-old. They still need their parents. Heck, as adults, we need other people to co-regulate. That's part of attachment. That's part of a relationship. We are biologically wired to need others for survival. That will depend on wiring and personality. Some people need less, like we know introverts don't necessarily need it as much and as frequently as extroverts. And then there's anywhere on the spectrum from introversion and extroversion. So a lot of different factors play into that. The bottom line, though, is at some point in time, we do need other people. And part of the benefit of relationship is having another person to compassionately hear what's going on and help you co-regulate. Currently, that for me would be my husband, sometimes my girlfriends, and occasionally I still call my 83-year-old mother. Although I do more co-regulating for her currently than she does for me, because she's getting up there. So those are, the other thing is, if you have the theoretical framework, then you have something to inform your decision making and making sure that what you are targeting has been informed by research. So we know from attachment and neurobiology, there's been decades of research on that in various and sundry ways. So we know it's grounded in something that is going to inform our decision making. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. When you're working with children with emotion dysregulation, if you've followed any of my trainings or any of my live streams, I predominantly use a neuroscience and attachment lens. For a theoretical play therapy foundation, that would probably be more child-centric play therapy, and then I kind of add in the attachment and neuroscience lens to ground that even more and help inform my decision making. So with that, over the years, because most of us in the mental health field, most of us have training in a lot of different modalities, and this would include play therapy as well. So in my mind, if I'm working with children as young as 3 all the way, well, I work with all the way up to adults as well, and adolescents, then, and I'm doing an integrated approach. So I'm bringing in different things that are different kind of interventions and activities to use for the presenting issue that's going on. And I've assessed that frequency, duration, and intensity. I've looked for roots. I've kind of understood where this emotion regulation is coming from. So I have some change point areas to target, because we know with emotion dysregulation, it could be for any number of mental health issues that they're struggling with. And being able to use that neuroscience and attachment lens kind of helps me pull all those together and figure out what my plan is going to be. And I like to have a framework to operate out of, because it's kind of like my GPS system. So over the year, and I love using acronyms. So I'm also foundationally trained in dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. One of the things I love about DBT, because that's a heavily skills-based treatment approach, what I love about it is uses acronyms to help you remember what you need to do. So that's why, to me, having an acronym to tie all this together with the neuroscience and attachment lens kind of helped to create that therapeutic space for change. And so I came up with the acronym to kind of help me think about the approach that I'm going to use, the activities that I'm going to use, my way of being, what do I need to think about to help my decision making through the treatment process. And so I came up with CAPES. The C stands for curiosity, because to me, curiosity, it creates that safety that we need in order to build that therapeutic rapport, to explore painful experiences, difficult issues, things maybe people aren't comfortable. Even in children, it will activate. If you explore painful things and they don't have the window of distress tolerance that will tolerate talking about it, then they're going to shut down and close up or change the subject or not want to come anymore. So using, and this is true for adolescents as well, using curiosity as a way of exploring, inviting your clients to come into joining the conversation. So I really, it is rare. I'm not going to say never, but I can't even really ever remember. I do not start questions with why. I'll start questions with what happened? What do you think made that happen? Or I'm curious what you were feeling at the time. Or, I wonder how you handled that. Or I wonder how the other person responded. So it's more just kind of an invitation, using curiosity to explore, inviting your client to come in and explore things with you. And the A stands for attunement and authenticity. So this is an attachment term, using attunement to tune in. And this is where some of that neuroscience comes in. Daniel Siegel talks about using resonant circuits. We use those in the therapy relationship to build rapport and kind of tune into what's going on with our clients, to engage our resonant circuits so we connect mind to mind, even physiologically. Like, I know sometimes there are times where I can just sense emotion. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming. If there's like a really strong emotion in there, and I've just kind of learned to, okay, so it's really strong. Let me kind of take a step back. How much of this is me? How much of this is my client? Let me explore this a little bit more. If it's my client, let me set that aside if it's me. So that attunement, but also authenticity, that's part of the therapeutic rapport. Of course, professionalism, we have to maintain those professional boundaries. And I can authentically show up as myself to build that safety and that space where children, adolescents will feel comfortable opening up. So it's that therapeutic use of self with authenticity. I have to really understand, and then, this takes time. I think this is part of our professional development to get a sense. At this point, 30 years in, I'm kind of got a sense of how I authentically show up, and I still have to manage that as well. Okay, so full disclosure here. I have my door closed to my office. My husband just left. My dog is at the door scratching. So if you hear this weird scratchy sound, it's at my dog. It's my dog. She wants in, and I will get her later. So be forewarned about the scratchy sound in the background. So creating that attunement to tap in, that helps to guide your decision making about pacing and other things, what's going on with your client, and then you're kind of holding that and thinking about how you want to use that information, or the pacing of exploration with that, so you don't overwhelm your clients. And then the P is playfulness. I mean, this is the whole foundation of play therapy, is tapping into those therapeutic powers of play, making sure you are thinking about those therapeutic powers of play and how those are being used with your clients in the playroom and with the modality that you're using, the play therapy modality that you're using. So one of the things that we know is there are all kinds of expressive arts, of which play therapy is officially kind of essentially an expressive arts. One of the things that sets play therapy apart from other expressive arts modality is accessing those therapeutic powers of play and knowing how to access those therapeutic powers of play. So that's the P. E is thinking about your child within your child client, either adolescent or young child, within their environmental context, especially if you are working with children with emotion dysregulation. You want to find out one, how they do in all of those in different environmental and contexts in which they exist. So if they're a kid, we know it's going to be school and home. If they're an adolescent, maybe it is, maybe they have a part-time job. It's not uncommon. Kids are involved in a lot of different clubs and organizations, maybe sports, also maybe a faith community where they're involved. So one of the things that you're looking at is, how do they function in all those different environments? Are they dysregulating in any of those environments? Because they don't always dysregulate in all of those different environments. You also want to look at how the environment is addressing their emotion dysregulation. If they're dysregulating in any of those different areas like home and school, you also want to look at ways in which something in those environments might be activating the emotion dysregulation. So you want to look at the child and explore all of those different environments. And then also you're thinking about where you need to intervene. So maybe you need to do a little coaching with parents on how to advocate for their child a little bit more effectively in different environmental contexts. Or maybe there's a possibility that they are neurodivergent and needs more assessment to be done, and helping parents to be able to connect and understand those different types of resources in the community and different types of assessment that can help figure out what's going on with their child. And then the S is structure. So how are you structuring the sessions? How are you structuring the beginning, middle, and end of the treatment process? Who's involved in the therapy sessions? How often do you meet? Part of, when you're tuning into your clients and you're creating that sense of safety, that attunement with them will help you to better understand the pacing, because you want to make sure you don't go too fast or too slow, and you get a sense of what works for your client and what doesn't work if you're using an integrated approach. And you can use that to adjust. Maybe certain types of play therapy activities work better than others. So we're always thinking about those things. So to me, using that CAPES framework helps me to remember all of these different things that I need to keep in mind as I'm thinking about and coming up with what type of treatment intervention to use. And as I'm going through the treatment process, what do I need to keep in mind along the process to ultimately, the goal is to help your child client not need to come anymore. I tell parents and kids from the very beginning, my job is to work myself out of the job. And what does that mean? What that means is my job is to help you get better so you don't need to come anymore. And so we're going to be figuring out how to help that to happen. So that is it for today. Just a little recap. Really understanding emotion regulation within an attachment and neuroscience lens helps you to conceptualize the whole child and remove some of that stigma about emotion regulation, because that stigma, kids are gonna feel it. They feel bad, they feel guilty, they start thinking they're bad, starts affecting their self-esteem. So being able to use a lens to better understand and help their parents and maybe even their teachers or other people that they're working with, school counselors and guidance counselors and social workers are awesome resources for your parents to get to know and to kind of enlist as a support for them if their child is having trouble at school. And there are so many reasons that children would dysregulate. So, really understanding attachment and neuroscience gives you a way of understanding what it is that's going on so that you can use that information to target that change process for your client. And then to me, having that framework that's grounded in theory and informed by research. So the CAPE framework is grounded in attachment theory and neurobiology. And we have tons of decades of research and understanding about that, especially with the emotion regulation. So to me, using that framework, and I like using the CAPES framework just to kind of keep things in mind and make sure I'm integrating the different types of interventions effectively. Like maybe I'm doing some attachment-based parenting and I'm using some cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm using some of those mind-body activities to teach coping skills. If I have a way to kind of pull all that together, and my way of being with the CAPES framework and helping my decision making along the way, then it kind of helps me make sure I stay on an effective path with my clients. So that is it for today. So I live stream every Wednesday at 7 a.m. Pacific time here in the United States. And I talk about all things play therapy and expressive arts. If you have found this information helpful, please feel free to share it, to like it and share it on your social media platforms. Next week, I'm super excited. I'm going to have a guest, and one of her areas of expertise is technology in the mental health arena, including doing teleplay therapy. And that is not an area where I have expertise. I do know it is, since the pandemic, I do know it is an area that I really believe we need to look at a little bit more and really begin to figure out what works and maybe what doesn't work. The limited time I used it did not go very well. And I was fortunate to be able to do a lot of play therapy sessions in person. I do think, though, because like I live in a state where there is mostly rural areas, and there are lots of states with rural areas or countries where there are rural areas. And so being able to have access, especially when children and adolescents are really struggling with mental health issues, to me, this topic of teleplay therapy and how to do it effectively is a really important topic. So I'm really excited. Next week, I am going to have a guest, which means I'm not going to be able to go live on Instagram. So if you're watching on Instagram, you may want to join me on LinkedIn or YouTube. You can hop over to my YouTube channel, which is Kathy Spooner, Renewing Hearts. I think it's consulting, Renewing Hearts Consulting, because I do live stream there. So I will have a guest next week talking about teleplay therapy, which I'm really excited about. And I do have some coming up in January. I'm going to be launching a whole series of pre-recorded videos. So I'm very excited about that. I'm calling it the Getting Grounded in Play Therapy Excellence. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, if you're interested, I do have a free PDF about the CAPES framework. You can get that on my website. My website is rrhcounseling.com. If you go to the resources page, you'll find it there. So on LinkedIn and in my Facebook group, I'll post a link in the comments. If you're watching on Instagram, you can hop over to my bio and you'll see a link in my bio for that. And you can grab that free PDF if you're interested. And I will see you next week. Bye.